Ohio University's final Women Entrepreneurship Week event, The Story of Sudara. This event features an exciting call to action and opportunity for the Ohio community to make an impact in Athens and around the world. My name is Hannah Kenny, and I graduated from OU last spring, where I studied organizational communications, marketing, and a certificate in entrepreneurship. I was OU's first ever female game day MC. My team won Startup Weekend 2020, and I'm so excited to be here with you again today. This event is brought to you by the Center for Entrepreneurship, Tech Growth Ohio, and the Women's Center. Through classes and co-curricular activities, including this one, the Center for Entrepreneurship serves the entire Ohio University community. It operates as a partnership between the College of Business and the Voinovich School for Leadership and Public Affairs. You can learn more about all the center has to offer at ohio.edu/entrepreneurship. One of the premier programs of the Ohio University Voinovich School of Leadership and Public Affairs, Tech Growth Ohio, is a public-private partnership composed of the Ohio Third Frontier Program, Ohio University, and the private investment community, providing business expertise, services, and investments for startup companies in the 20-county southeastern Ohio area. Ohio University's Women's Center is an integral part of the university's transformative learning community and a national leader in its own right. The center promotes inclusion and honors difference. It works with faculty, staff, students, and the larger Athens community to promote academic achievement, active global citizenship, and substantive leadership positions for women in all professional fields, as well as building confidence within women's personal lives by using an intersectional, though gendered, lens. Before we begin, one item of housekeeping. We will be holding Q&A at the end of their conversation, for which we will accept questions via the Q&A box. Now, it gives me great joy to introduce founder and chairwoman of Sudara Freedom Fund, Shannon Keith, and CEO of Sudara, Lisa Flynn. First, let me tell you a bit about Ms. Keith. During a trip to India in 2005, Shannon was inspired to take action and launch an innovative business venture. Her drive to disrupt the social enterprise space and create a lasting effect for survivors and those at high risk of human trafficking led her to found and cultivate Sudara, a certified benefit corporation. Shannon created Sudara with a mission rooted in job creation and freedom-filled choice for women who have escaped sex slavery. Over the past 15 years, Shannon has taken the organization far and wide. As for Ms. Flynn, the CEO of Sudara, conscious leadership is in Lisa's DNA. She consistently builds brands and systems that relentlessly drive return on investment while placing as much emphasis on nurturing collaboration and healthy teams. A philanthropist at heart, Lisa's strategic vision and plan for bettering humanity is the very thread of Sudara's mission. She was drawn to Sudara because she knows that her innovative business model, paired with her passion, will drive global impact and propel Sudara to achieve what the world needs: gender equity. Before I turn it over to Lisa and Shannon to reveal the story of Sudara, we would like to share a short video about the Benefit Corporation.
Every day in cities across India, women rise. They rise to go to work, They rise to take care of their home and family. They rise to greet the day. Yet experts estimate that millions of women in India are not able to rise. They have been lured with false promises of employment, sold to traffickers by family members, forced into the sex trade through extreme poverty and duress. But there is hope. In the skills training centres that Sudara partners with across India, women rise with dignity. They rise with hope. They rise in freedom. Sudara partners with centres in India to empower women through living wage employment, skills training and restorative care. Every woman who comes to the centres is on a personal journey to freedom. And woven throughout each story is a newfound hope for her future. Indeed, there is hope. Sudara loungewear is stitched together with pride by the women at our partner sewing centres. And every print is named after these women to honour their difficult journey and celebrate their newfound freedom. Our hope is that each time someone wears Sudara goods, they will think of the brave and amazing women who made their clothing. They will think of the investment they are making in a woman's future, and they will share their story with others. Though women come to Sudara's partner centres on a journey to freedom, their hopes and dreams are familiar to us all. A desire for safety and comfort, a sense of belonging and place, and an even brighter future for their children. Indeed, there is freedom. Freedom to follow the journey of one's choosing. Freedom to live the life that one imagines. Freedom to be. Sudara. Will you join us?
Good afternoon, Ohio University. My name is Shannon Keith, and Lisa and I are so thankful for this amazing opportunity to be with you, and that we were invited to be part of such a dynamic program that you have for Women Entrepreneurship Week. It is so inspiring to be connecting with a group of female entrepreneurs, and we're so honored to share the Sudara story with you. So I'm going to spend about 10 to 12 minutes giving you a brief history of where we've come from and how we've evolved, had to iterate and pivot over the last 15 years. And then I'll hand it over to Lisa, Sudara's CEO, where she'll talk more about how Sudara is surviving this pandemic and our plans for the future. And then we'll have some fun time for interaction and Q&A at the end. So that'll be really great to keep your questions in that Q&A box. We are dealing today in our world with a massive problem of sex slavery, and Sudara is tackling this injustice head-on through business. In the past 5 years, we've sold $11 million in pajamas, but we've just scratched the surface because there are so many more women and children that need job opportunities. It's estimated that 3 million women and children are trapped in sex slavery in the brothels of India alone, in one single country. Human trafficking is indeed the fastest growing crime in the world and third in total revenue behind the drugs and arms trade. Last year, slave traders made an estimated conservative $32 billion. That's more than Nike, Google, and Starbucks combined. So this is indeed very big and dirty business that we're talking about. But I didn't know all of those facts 15 years ago when I took a trip to India that changed the trajectory of my life and my career. So first, a brief history on that trip that changed my life. My husband and I, back in 2004, went to India and just fell in love with the people, the culture, the food. It was just an amazing experience. And so the next year, we went back in 2005 with a small group, kind of a humanitarian group made from people from our church and some of our family. And the tsunami had just hit that region, if you'll recall, and we dedicated a fresh water well and worked with an NGO to match us to a community that was in need of fresh water. And it just so happened that our family's well dedication got matched with a brothel community. And at the time, I had no clue what a brothel community was. Again, this was 15 years ago. This was before the term human trafficking or sex trafficking was on anybody's radar. And so as the woman of the family, I was asked to just go and say a few words to the predominantly female crowd at this well dedication. And that experience shattered my heart into about 1,000 pieces. Because as I was sharing, our family's reason for dedicating this well, I was looking out into a sea of faces. And what I saw staring back at me were many women whose eyes were empty. It was a harrowing experience. It was like this hopelessness that was resonated back at me. And in that instant, I thought, wow, as a global citizen, as a female, I've got to do something to help these women, to help the plight of my sisters across the globe. And I thought, but what am I going to do? I did have a successful corporate sales background. And so I just thought, hey, if there's a win-win here, if there's something that they could make that I could sell in the US, then they wouldn't have to sell their bodies against their will to feed themselves and their families. And so really it was just a divine flash of inspiration. And I thought, pajamas, it just popped in my head. And it was inspired by the beautiful textiles that the women in the crowd were wearing, these beautiful sari materials. And I thought, that's such a beautiful, hopeful part of their culture that if they could make pajamas, I could sell them. And so what did I do? I gathered up a whole suitcase full of materials on that trip and went back home and started telling my friends about my idea. I got some girlfriends and, asked them if they would come, whoever could sew, and fed them wine and chocolate as a bribe to sew what would be the first kind of mocked up pajamas and loungewear. And then started asking folks in the business community. Again, I was kind of in my mid to late 20s. This was my first entrepreneurial endeavor. And it became very clear at that point that people were like, oh, if you want to help people, start a nonprofit. That's what nonprofits do. They help people. And I was like, but I want to do a business. I want to make jobs for women and sell these products. And they're like, hey, the Girl Scouts sell cookies. So, you can do that under a nonprofit umbrella. And at that time, there were no other options in terms of social businesses. Tom's Shoes hadn't launched. Any of these other businesses that we think about, they were non-existent at that point. So I thought, okay, that's what we'll do. So in 2005, I founded a nonprofit. And Sudara's mission has always been that nonprofit about bringing a light to the darkness of sex trafficking. Our mission is to create pathways to freedom for women out of the brothels through job creation. And to date, we've helped over 5,000 women with dignified employment, skills training, and job placement so that women can support themselves and their children in a sustainable way without having to sell their bodies against their will. We do this by selling a beautiful line of pajamas and loungewear that's inspired and created in India and then sold here in the United States and hopefully soon to be around the world. To grow the mission and help more women and children, I, along with our nonprofit board at the time, decided to spin the business out from under the nonprofit and start Sudara Inc. as a certified benefit corporation in 2015. So that was just about 5 years ago. This was a strategic move so that the nonprofit could focus on the wraparound services that help the women, and Sudara Inc. could grow the pajamas and loungewear business to a greater extent. So what was one organization then became two distinct entities, but with the identical mission: women empowering women through skills training and job creation. Sudara Inc. is a certified benefit corporation with a triple bottom line, and that puts people and planet on par with profits. We believe in stakeholder supremacy and value that over mere just shareholder supremacy. We do good through fashion by using an ethical and virtuous supply chain in India to make all of our products. Sudara products leverage fashion and business as a force for good. Our cool pajama pants and lounge pants really create the revenue that invests in the skills training and job placement, which in turn give women economic freedom, and the result is a better, more equitable world where our most marginalized population are no longer oppressed. This is equitable social change, and this is also just plain good business. You know, this is such an exciting model for Lisa and I and our team, because Sudara's mission has never been about creating an army of seamstresses. It's about giving our most marginalized sisters a choice and economic freedom. And that's how we scale our impact. We currently have over 10 different vocational training options for women that really cover a spectrum of literacy and aptitude for women from all backgrounds. A few of our skills training programs include more advanced things like computer office training for women who, prior to coming to our centers, had a chance for literacy and education, but there are many women who are completely illiterate and have never had an opportunity to go to school. And so for them, they really need vocational options that they could do with their hands. So we also have things like henna art that you'll see on your screen, embroidery, and tailoring, just to name a few. The skills training programs are 9-month certification courses, and some have advanced training courses available as well. So together with our partnering organizations in India, roughly 1,200 women every single year are being trained with an 89% job placement rate when they graduate their programs. That's a game changer. Charity is not a game changer. Job creation and dignified work changes lives and circumstances. So that is what life transformation and systemic change out of abject poverty looks like. It's happening. We're excited about it, but it needs to happen at a much greater scale. And, you know, a few companies alone can't achieve it. We need lots more people creating lots of different and interesting social businesses to really move the needle. And business and job creation can't just happen in a vacuum. And so while both the nonprofit and the for-profit share the same mission, I do want to take just a brief moment and discuss the distinct role that the nonprofit plays in what I previously referred to as those wraparound services. Because at the end of the day, it's about more than just job creation. We realize the need to create means that the job opportunities can only be realized when women are healthy and whole, and we take this holistic approach. So the wraparound services are all about supporting the structures that we as complex human beings need in our lives, especially this group of highly traumatized women. They need things that we all need, like safe housing, proper medical care, nutrition. Many of these survivors are single moms in need of parenting help and educational needs for their friends, as public education in India is not free and covered by the government. So they need lots of tuition assistance and those sort of practical things. So together, our mission, with our mission-aligned partners in India, we listened really to the group of women that we were trying to serve, and they said they needed these type of supports, so we responded in kind. And we really center our work and our services around their voice and their needs. Again, a lot of people will ask, you know, what does it look like again, and why pajamas? And I go back to that founding moment of the divine inspiration. And really, once we tested it in the market, it is a product line that is accessible and has a huge, large target market. You know, all of us, whether you wear pajamas to bed or not, you know, you own them, right? So pajamas and loungewear are easy to wear and easy to love. So our products really stay in our customers' closets and out of the landfills, which is very important to us. Because of such versatility, they also quickly become a staple in the wardrobe and lifestyle of our target markets, which include the conscious consumer, the global traveler, and the social activist. Our products are also very giftable, and so we see a large spike in sales during the holiday gifting season, which is right around the corner. We've enjoyed successes and many failures over the past 5 years. Sudara Inc. has been an entity. Like I mentioned, selling over $11 million in sales, but also at times have struggled to stay alive. Both Lisa and I are well acquainted with the ups and downs of the entrepreneurial journey, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have at the end. Through our trials, we've had to pivot and iterate and ask ourselves the tough questions, change tactics, change strategies, and I've personally spent hours on my knees in prayer, and I've cried, you know, probably buckets of tears along the way too. But here's the really cool thing. When your company is serving a mission much bigger than any one individual, the hugely important mission like Sudara's, it is the fuel that gets our team through the hard times and the struggles. It's this shared vision, this thing bigger than ourselves, that our work is really significant and that we really are truly being change agents in this world. And that belief continues to fuel us, and it's the fire that keeps us going day in and day out. And we're on purpose a very diverse and equitable team. As a female founder, I'm also part of the Latinx community. So as a woman of color, I believe that we will be able to fulfill our mission in a much greater way when all types of voices and perspectives contribute to solving one of the world's most harrowing injustices, like sex trafficking. You know, we have big problems beyond just sex trafficking to solve in our world today. So here is the world's to-do list. If those of you aren't familiar with it, these are the 17 UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals that over 200 countries agreed are the most pressing problems of our time. And the goal is to solve them in large part by the year 2030. So we have a lot of work to do, friends. That's only 10 years away, and we need to get cracking. Sudara's mission strategically aligns with 3 of these 17 goals. First is number 1, no poverty. Then number 5, gender equality, and number 8, decent work and economic growth. We believe that these 3 are really root systemic issues that when addressed properly, we will have the secondary effects in solving most all of the others on the list. Because here's the deal. There is so much research in the development world that proves when you empower and invest in women, we as women, in turn, invest into our children, into our communities. And that's the magic. That is the magic. Women empowering women through collaborative efforts and partnerships. I love it. I love collaboration so much because that's how we're going to tackle this to-do list. This is how we as global citizens are tackling the to-do list, and we at Sudara are doing it through collaboration. And collaboration has always been a core value of Sudara from the very start, before I even knew or saw this list. It's through that lens of collaboration that I appointed Lisa as Sudara's new CEO a little less than a year ago, in the fall of 2019. That was when Sudara needed to pivot again. And I knew Lisa to be a strong, smart, collaborative female leader that would partner with me and help take Sudara to the next level to fulfill our mission to an even greater extent. So I'm so proud and happy to hand the mic over at this time to Lisa to share more about our current pivot strategies and Sudara's bright future. Take it away, Lisa.
Thanks, Shannon. It's so good to be here with you. Are we all seeing me now? Are we all good? Okay, sorry, technical difficulties continue. So thank you so much, Shannon, not only for that warm intro, but for also inviting me to join you on this very important mission. And thank you to all of you in the Ohio University community who are coming out here and who care about it and want to hear about it and who want to learn more about what they can do and what they can do to help. So I'm so happy to be here with you all. And I want to start with just pointing out what a great example Shannon has made of women empowering women, giving up her role as CEO and trusting me to come in and to help her take her company, her vision and her heart, not away from her, but to the next level with her. I'm honored to be in this role, and I take my responsibility to lead the charge against one of the world's biggest problems very seriously. So I'm so honored to be here, and I'm so happy that you all find this important enough to lend us your time as well. So when Shannon came to me last year, she said, I think I've got a really big problem and I need your help. And I was totally there because it turns out that really big problems are my jam. I love them. I've been in startup and growth stage businesses for 2 decades now, which seems crazy, in roles as founder, CEO, CMO, CRO, COO on other teams. I've had multiple different businesses, venture-backed plays, as well as bootstrapped. And I've, as Shannon mentioned, had some successes, but also a lot of failures. You do learn more from the failures than the successes, so be sure you're paying attention during those times. And one thing that I found that's the same in all of this and all of this craziness is change, right? The change is what is constant, as they say. And the thing about that is that's really hard and scary for people to deal with. People typically suck at change. And I don't think that I need any more evidence about that than just 2020 itself. And so I would encourage you all to recognize some of these things that are coming up in 2020 as opportunities to practice your entrepreneurship skills. So there's a nice silver lining for you. So anyway, with 2020, with all of this change, one thing that we always remember is rule number one in entrepreneurship, which is don't panic. I realized that through my startup and growth stage experience, basically the land that I'm living in is crisis mode, kind of all the time. So as entrepreneurs and young people heading into this market, I think that's something that you should probably be prepared for. I don't think anyone told me that, and it took me a minute to figure it out. The other thing that I figured out in that, though, is that this is how we grow, right? We need to go through these transitionary times. We need to break, we need to crack, we need to see the areas that need reinforcement if we're going to get to see that change that we all keep talking about wanting to hear and keep doing things to see in this world. So change shouldn't be scary. It's an opportunity really to lean in and to see where we can solve some problems together. And I've found that doing that with community and through collaboration is the best way. I also think that we have all the resources that we need. I don't think this or believe this. I know this. We have the resources that we need to solve our problems, whether they're within ourselves or in our community, our school, or in our world. And so that's why I've started using a resource-based strategy and then adding some design thinking when I'm talking about business models. So using community and collaboration to power systemic change. And that's what we're weaving into Sudara. And we started that even pre-pandemic. And I'm going to tell you some stories from pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. And the reason that we're doing that is we want to continue to make progress toward our goal, as Shannon mentioned, of building a stable and virtuous supply chain, even in the worst of conditions. So we're hearing a lot about supply chains these days. And just to level set, basically a supply chain is all the people that make all the things that we use kind of all the time, right? And we're understanding now that when people in India shut down or in China shut down, that does affect us everywhere. So what we really want to do is work on building a good or a virtuous supply chain. That's all that means. So when you're buying something like a $3 t-shirt in a capitalist economy and you're thinking like, how is this possible? Is this a little too good to be true that I'm getting a $3 t-shirt? Chances are that, yeah, it is too good to be true. So in a capitalist economy, when we can get prices down, there's unintended consequences that happen other places. So, I don't know if everybody came in, I don't believe that anybody came into things saying, hey, we're going to make this really evil. I think people are just trying to solve problems for themselves and not realizing how that affected other people in other places. So fast fashion exists, right? That's part of the evils of the capitalist economy. So what Sudara is doing is to work against that. And what fast fashion means, kind of back to what I was saying, there's actually websites you can go to see where your dollars are, what economies they are supporting. So are you supporting fast fashion and some of the evils that are within, or are you supporting a good and virtuous supply chain? And there's easy ways for us to find out now how that works. I mean, you can Google it and they give like grades to different brands and things like that. So our goal, again, is to really create this we're building the virtuous supply chain and we want to make it stable. And so we have to do that with systems, right? Just like the bad guys. So we're working on big systemic problems. And, when we think about these problems and we think about crimes, so human trafficking is one of the fastest growing crimes in the world. And when you think crimes, are you thinking like, guys with pantyhose on their heads and like running around, bumbling and pushing each other into the bushes? Like, that's not what it is, right? This is one of the largest industries in the world. They are systems and they run very, very well, right? And it's not broken. We hear people talking about a system that's broken. It's not broken. It's working exactly as it was designed to work. And now what's happened is after a couple of 100 years, we're seeing things really just kind of take on a life of their own, where all of a sudden you're involved in something and maybe you didn't even know that you were. But once you know, and once you realize you have the power to get out of that, by doing something as simple as buying this cup of coffee instead of that, these pajama pants instead of those, to really use your power and funnel that into the places where you want to see the change in this world. So we need big systemic solutions that will create this multi-generational change for good. We collectively are really the proverbial other side of the coin. So let's take a look at our impact ecosystem model with Sudara. Yep, and we will see what we're doing to really utilize this, a shared economy to create this ecosystem to work against the world's biggest problems. So when I got on the scene, we had 3 different entities to work with, as Shannon mentioned. We had Sudara Freedom Fund to take care of the wraparound services. We had Sudara Inc. generating revenue through pajamas and loungewear in US e-commerce sales. Excuse me, I know I'm talking fast. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. We all, we all have to practice, right? So the things that we had, Sudara Freedom Fund and Inc. were bringing in capital, basically. And that's how other companies will need to go out and raise venture capital, raise revenue. We didn't have to do that because we already had that coming in through donations and through purchases. Now, remember, our goal here is to create more jobs and the opportunity for women to actually be able to achieve those jobs. We're not looking for the highest profit. Sudara Inc., selling the pants, worked with our trusted partners and the infrastructure that we already had set up through Sudara India, and that's what Shannon and team have been working on for the last 15 years. So they are in the community, they are working with the stakeholders, they're building, they're measuring, they're adjusting, they're listening to what the needs are. And where Sudara India started working together really well with Sudara Inc. on their operations, making sure that we were really actually serving the need rather than just talking about it, and doing it in the most efficient way possible so that we could grow as fast as we could to help more, because again, that's the goal, not biggest profit, most jobs. So we already had a great brand and a great story to tell, and it was really ready to, the timing was really right for it to transition into an activist brand. So another thing that happened since Sudara was formed that is really notable to marketers and to entrepreneurs is, you know, all of the social injustice that's happening now, kicking off with the Me Too movement for a brand like Sudara that's specifically talking about empowering women. So 5 years ago when we started, activist brands weren't really that much of a thing unless they were like Patagonia, where they could kind of do whatever they wanted. So since the Me Too movement and the rest of the social injustice that has happened, we've been able to really lean into that activism some more and hopefully lead by a good example for other benefit corporations and entrepreneurs wanting to start impact companies on what a business model looks like outside of the typical capitalist economy. So then we had to mix in a different strategy. As Shannon said earlier, they tried many. We mixed in one that really just took this shared resources model into account. It was the resource-based strategy, a little bit of design thinking sprinkled in. And we recognized that really what we needed to do beyond anything else was literally just sell more pants. And again, marry that with, it's not about the pants, but we needed to have stable jobs for people in India, knowing that they had those jobs the next day and the next day and the next day, because as Shannon mentioned, that's what changes circumstances, not just random donations. And then we had a plan moving forward. We were going to add the volume that we needed through international expansion so that we could jump basically the tracks, going from being a primarily direct consumer model, which, you know, at that point you're getting 80 to 100% of MSRP, into more of a distributor and wholesale model where that's looking at margins more like, you know, you're looking at 30 to 50%. So we needed to add a lot of volume really fast. And the plan to do that was through international expansion. We were well on our way when the pandemic hit. So back to pivoting again. And we went back to the same, you know, we kind of like, okay, we know how to do this dance. So if we can look at the next slide. When the pandemic hit, we had to get creative because we could get to the next slide. Yep, we had to get very creative, obviously, because everybody had to get creative. All of our stuff was stuck in India. All of our inventory was in India, and India was on lockdown. The women in India who needed our help and the children needed it more than ever. They couldn't work, they couldn't get to work. We still needed to get money to them, and then it became really about the food. And so how were we going to do that without anything to sell? And in a world that was basically in shock, right? So what did we do? Same dance again. Went back, looked at the resources that we had, looked at our community, saw who else needed help, and saw the biggest resource that we have in our community is our community really at whole, who we call our Sudara fam. They're the ones whose purchases and donations make all of this work. So, you know, we can come up with the best business models and the most important causes and, you know, problems to work against, but without the help of the many, we don't get anything done. So we went to local businesses in Bend, we featured their products, we helped them sell through, it helped us continue to keep revenue rolling and donations going during that time. And it really was a win-win. And then we went back to basically continuing the plan, working on talking to corporations for corporate events, corporate gifting, looking at distributors, bigger wholesalers, subscription boxes, all of that, to continue to try to make bigger sales to create more jobs. And it's been working, thankfully. We're still definitely in a scrappy mode in that way, which is why, again, back to that resource-based, another example that we're going to use is the t-shirt design contest that we've launched here with Ohio University. So we're super excited about the win-win-win that this presents. obviously a win for the designers and people in the fashion school who want to gain real world experience with companies like Sudara. We are so excited to be able to feature your work and lift your voices and show your vision and your passion. We love that this is a real world opportunity for you as well. And with that real world opportunity, we also are going to pay real world dollars for the people who design the t-shirts that we end up using and actually selling and launching to all of our people in our Sudara community. So we're very excited about that. It's awesome for Sudara because we didn't have designers right now. Our whole fall winter line got wiped out when the supply chain crashed and we had to restart. So this is perfect for us. We can't wait to work together, and we're hoping maybe some of those designers might become interns and even employees at some point down the road. So we're super excited about that. And we're most excited about the rest of the community who's going to participate, because through your not only good intentions, but good actions in basically voting with your well, first of all, voting with your opinions and your preferences on which shirts are going to be chosen and selected. That voting starts, I believe, next week. Then you're going to vote with your dollars, hopefully, and pick the shirt that you really want. And those proceeds, a portion of those proceeds will go to a local agency, My Sister's Place, that works for domestic violence right here in your local area in Athens. And it still supports the virtuous supply chain that we're building in India. And more than anything, you're sharing and just promoting what we're doing and telling more people about their opportunity to vote with their dollars is so, so important. So please join us and vote. And you know what? Voting is really cool anytime. Anytime you have the opportunity, anytime you have the chance, please vote, because, and you will see that it does make a difference. We have democracy all around us, and the more we use it, the more powerful it gets. And so I just, again, want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being here, for working in community and collaboration with us. I can't wait to hear your questions, because that's really what Shannon and I love to talk about most, is what interests you. And Paul, thank you, and the rest of the Ohio University team, thank you so much for having us, and we're looking forward to questions.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Shannon. That was fantastic. I am looking in the Q&A bar to field questions for you. We have some coming in now. Please, as you're out there thinking, if you have the question, someone else probably has it too. So please ask. First one comes from Heather. How do you decide how many different styles and patterns to offer? Is it a feeling you have, or is it more data driven?
I'll let Shannon answer that one. She's been working in product design for years.
Sure. That's a great question, Heather. And it's a little bit of both, right? So we definitely apply art and science. And I don't know if you're in fashion, but there's definitely some like best practices within merchandising, which is a part, like kind of the business side of fashion, that's really driven by a lot of data, right? So you want to think about sell-through rates and what are your carryovers, but you have to have your first line to get the data. So that's when it's kind of a hunch, and a lot of it's driven in a startup environment, in a bootstrapped environment, by how much can you afford, right? How many prints? You might want 12 prints, but you can only afford 6, great, you go with 6. And then as you get more revenue, you can add on. And then once you have those, using data and analytics is really important, because like Lisa said, we vote with our dollars. And so you might have a little darling and a favorite that nobody buys, right? And so really the product market fit is what people like and what they buy. And then those become kind of your best sellers. And then as you go through seasons, if you think like an iconic brand like Chanel or something, they always have the Chanel brand, the bag, right? That in and out of season, it doesn't matter. That's iconic. Why? Because it's a bestseller. So it will never go away. But then other seasons can rotate in other products. It's a really great question. If you're interested, further, would love to connect with you kind of offline. But that's sort of like, a good overview, I think.
I'd add to that too, Shannon, that, when we take it forward with technology and marketing now, we have like a crystal ball now. We can ask people what they want, right? And we're about to show you how. So for example, with the t-shirt contest that we're doing. So at first, we're going to take it to people in the Ohio U community and also our Sudara community to really just like vote for their design. So it doesn't cost, anything but time right now to design something, put it on a website and say, vote, what do you like? So people can start to tell you what they want. And then we start to, using technology, we can start to be predictive and things like that. But so many times people want to use, people make it a little bit more difficult than it needs to be. I think these days we can just ask people and they'll tell us. And then the best part about that for a brand or a business is it gets people engaged, which is what we all want to do. And, we can do a little more forward thinking instead of just making decisions from past historical data.
Yeah,
That's great. Thank you.
Points.
That's awesome. Next question comes from Anne. What are some ways that you marketed your product when you first started out?
I guess I'll take that one because it's when we first started out and Lisa wasn't around. And honestly, it's so funny, Anne, because as an entrepreneur, you try things. So we did, kind of home parties. I mean, this was before we even had an online website. So it was literally bins of pajamas in my garage. And we would, oh, so-and-so's having a book club. Great. Let's take our pajamas over there. Oh, the church is having a Christmas bazaar. Awesome. There's a farmer's market thing that someone says they want to throw up a table. Cool. And it was really very localized. But the cool part was when we put up a website, suddenly we were like, whoa, we're getting customers from all over the country because, it was very word of mouth. Again, we were in a nonprofit environment, so we did not have a marketing budget. It was very small. And a lot of times donors, don't like their grandma's inheritance dollar money that they're donating to go to marketing. They don't really understand that that's an investment, right? So we had to do things very kind of grassroots. And one of the coolest thing was, I remember being at a board meeting back in the day, and I'm kind of dating myself here, but someone was like, we're getting a lot of sales from Pinterest. What's Pinterest? And we literally in the meeting had to be like, what's Pinterest? And because our back end, so this was like, this was back in the day. I think Pinterest literally had just launched like that year. So that was really cool because people were organically just pinning our stuff to their boards. And then, it kind of took on this life of its own. And the reason we had to do a website is because our margins, we were boxed out of any wholesale. So people would ask wholesale and would be like, sorry, I get it produced for what you're wanting me to sell it to you for wholesale. So until we could grow our volumes, we had to do a direct to consumer marketing play.
That's great. Thank you. Next question also related to your startup phase. So where did you get the seed capital to start Sudara?
Thankfully, my husband's a really generous guy who shares my heart for the world. So a lot of it was just personal funds. We probably invested, $25,000 of our own money because we were both young professionals without kids at the time. And then we also were able, because we were in a nonprofit environment, to do some donations because our job creation really was a programmatic expense of the nonprofit. So we did a few, small fundraising events that raised, probably an additional $15,000, and that all went into travel expenses, going back and forth to India, buying the first amounts of fabric. And for the first while, no one was on the payroll. I had a full-time job that was helping me fund this thing. And so probably for a good, 18 months or so, it was all volunteer driven.
And you were doing it. Oh, sorry, Lisa.
Yeah. So do you have questions about the past? Because I was going to also talk about
no,
go forward strategy.
Please.
Yeah. So go forward strategy. It is really, so to date, we haven't taken on any outside investment. So there has been grants, donations, we've won some prize money, but there are no outside investors. And that's really important to us because we want to, be different. As I mentioned, I've had several venture-backed plays, so I know what that has to look like and the decisions that entrepreneurs need to make and especially in a typical business where they're not a certified benefit corporation and they don't have the triple bottom line. So sometimes as a CEO of a for-profit entity that only values profit, if you're doing what's best for your company by those rules, you have to make some bad decisions. So I didn't want to get anywhere near that again. And Shannon never wanted to go anywhere near it, probably, especially coming through the nonprofit channels. It was just a different world that she was entering. So I know that there's a lot of, impact capital out there now. But we're really looking at creating, more resources through our community. So we really wanted to keep that so that we can have an equity pool that goes, so we truly can be owner or employee owned all the way down to our stakeholders throughout. So we're not just talking about not wanting to value shareholder primacy over stakeholder primacy, we're actually doing it. And sometimes that makes it harder because you can't get the money in the places that are, easy. And I say that with only 2% of women are getting venture capital. I'm very lucky to have and privileged to have been in that 2% a couple of times, being born a white woman in the Northwest in the United States with a great education and access to all the things. So we really wanted to do it different so that we could then open up our playbooks essentially and show other companies how to do it this way as well. And so far it's working. Everyone's invested in the beginning. We really don't like to work based off of a volunteer model because we're a company that is really all about creating financial independence for women so that they can have their own freedom and not be dependent on anyone for that. In countries where sometimes you still can't get a bank account. So we're talking a lot about RBG these days. God rest. I miss her already. When we're talking about we couldn't get a bank account in this country, like some women still can't in the world right now and today. And so we need to be looking at different models and funding in different ways. And when I came into the scene, one of the questions and a lot of people's recommendations was to take on venture funding because we were ready to go, to the next level. And we very consciously chose not to do that and rather to grow through, we knew that we had amazing people in our community and we knew that they wanted to see this mission grow. And when we asked for their help, they said yes. And we pulled off things I've never seen in marketing departments or teams before, only because of the good of the people who wanted to see this mission continue. And that's just pretty amazing. And so we're going to continue, with that. And we look forward to sharing with you how we're rolling out equity down to each stakeholder, sometimes down to, hoping to go down to the cotton growers at some point in the supply chain, and what that looks like and how we can operate as a business and stay stable ourselves to continue to be able to do that.
So related to that, Lisa, the next question comes from Kaylee. What are some tips you have to make social businesses both profitable and sustainable?
Ooh, that's a great question, Kaylee. And you can do both. You don't have to choose. So let's just start with that. One of the things that I love about the Sudara ecosystem, and one thing that really made me want to join the team for, kind of put a ring on it, because typically after my last rodeo, I've just been consulting and helping, is really joining the two, understanding the whole issue. And this comes down to design thinking as well, right? So understand the people and the whole issue. And then how can you use technology and marketing and business models to work within that to solve it. So I love having the nonprofit, having two entities working as one, whether it's a nonprofit and a B Corp, or whether it's just two companies that have said, hey, we don't like going through the process to get certified and all those things is lengthy and extensive and can be expensive. So even if it's just a couple of people, a couple of businesses saying, we're going to agree to work together and we're going to get through this together. That's one thing that I would really recommend, because again, using the resources that you have at your disposal. When people think about resources, so let's just use tacos for an example. If I need the resources to make tacos, I either need, $1 or $5 or $10 to go someplace, depending on what level of taco I want to get, or I need to get the meat and the tortilla, or I need to get the flour, all the things, right? And so I think a lot of times when we are looking for something, we wait for the fully formed taco to show up on our door, these days probably through Deal Dash, rather than recognizing that, hey, I'm in Central Oregon, we have cattle and we have farms and we have people who are looking for jobs right now because they've just been laid off. Look at your resources in that really holistic way and say, kind of back, even taking some pages from the playbooks of the old barter system of how can you work together to really, get what you need to get. And a lot of times, if you just do the trading thing and there's enough people at the room, it's like throwing a potluck from the back of the pantry. It's a little shaky if you do that by yourself, but if you get the whole neighborhood involved or the whole street involved, you're having a party.
That's really great, Lisa. Thank you. Next question comes from Laura. Have you ever considered bringing Sudara to a retail store, or do you want to stick to online sales?
So we are right in that transition. That's a great question. So when we started, it was direct to consumer. As Shannon mentioned, being a small company, it's hard you can't sell to wholesaler distributors because you just can't meet the margins, right? So you have to get to a certain point as an apparel brand working with the Keystone, model where basically it's your retail is 100%, right, of the MSRP, and then wholesale typically purchases for 50% of that. Distributors are usually at 30% of that, and then there's some steps in between due to volume. So what happens with companies that do a very good job and they make it through the direct consumer, and then they want to start going to stores like Nordstrom's, they can't because the numbers just aren't there. And so it creates, and what we have right now, because of the onset of, B Corps and impact companies and how that's really gaining, and a lot more brands that are trying to work with the virtuous supply chain are trying to grow right now. Everyone's sort of getting stuck, and a lot of them are dying because they can't get past that. They can't level up, right? Like a video game. And that's exactly where Sudara was when I came into the picture. So switching from direct to consumer to distributor, which would be Nordstrom's, or wholesale, which would be a smaller, like Nordstrom's is just so big that they hit the distributor category. Wholesale would be more like a boutique or a mom and pop, that's like downtown or on campus or whatever. So making that switch is very, very difficult. And we end up with all these startup companies that when they do well, they end up being too big to be small and too small to be big. And that's where they sort of die. So one of the things that Sudara is working on, especially, and we wanted to pre-pandemic, but it's more of a need now post-pandemic, is to really help companies of that size on both sides of supply and demand. So we are doing things like product development as a service right now, where we have the supply chain management at hand. So if you have an idea for a shirt or a skirt or a backpack or whatever you want to make, Sudara is going to start taking cohorts through where we will handle that, or help you do it with you, do it for you, or give you the DIY on how to. Because that's really difficult and a lot of companies die at that. So you have to be very, very sure you're ready to sort of jump and that you're going to make it. And like I said, our plan to make it was adding international expansion, because it's like, how can I add 3 times the revenue coming in without like tripling my ad budget? Well, I need a bigger market, right? So those are things that you definitely need to consider when going into bigger brands. But to answer your question, yes, we are now ready to do that. We hope to be in Nordstrom's and lots of stores just like it soon. We are in some online marketplaces like Devoted, which is pretty awesome. They just came out and shifted their brand to really focus on impact companies. So we're super excited to be working with them, and many others.
That's great. Thank you. So I think we're getting tight on time, but I think we maybe have time for a couple more questions quickly. So one, hopefully is an easy one, comes from Konstantina. What does Sudara mean?
I guess I'll take that one. Good question, Konstantina. It's a riff off a Sanskrit word meaning beautiful. So that Sanskrit word in India is actually Sundara, S-U-N-D-A-R-A. But again, in the world of online, we couldn't get that URL. And so it was like, how do we use this as inspiration, but really pick a word that no one else will have, no one can use, and we can infuse our own meaning. And so it's inspired from this word that means beautiful, because we believe, nothing's more beautiful than a life of freedom. And when women have agency over their own life. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Shannon. And the last one, another one from Kaylee for both of you. How did you both make the leap of faith in your 20s, or Lisa, maybe in your case, in your teens, to become an entrepreneur?
Oh boy, Kaylee. Yeah, I think I was born with that card for sure. There were a lot of early signs. I know Paul's heard about some. I don't know if everybody knows, but I've known Paul's wife for quite some time now.
This is true.
Yeah. Thanks for not saying I'm her oldest friend again, because that sometimes is a little bit painful.
Right.
So yeah, so I think that I was setting up like camps, cheerleading camps, and lemonade stands, my whole life. But I made the leap. Honestly, this is a funny story. When I knew that I wanted to have my first baby, because I knew that I wouldn't be able to be the kind of mom that I wanted to be and be the employee that I knew that I was and needed to be. And so I knew that I needed more flexibility. And at 27 years old is when I started my first real business. I had a couple side hustle things before that. Yeah, that actually started my first business at 27, and it was to be a better mom. Isn't that interesting? I fell into a statistic actually of most what are high achieving women, which means women that have graduated with, graduated college with a degree, and fell out of the workforce and fell out of that sort of chain into leadership, as many do. I think for me, it was meant to be. I was supposed to stay out of that lane, and I was supposed to stay in the entrepreneur lane. But unfortunately, so many women get bounced out and can't get back in because they're having children. And that's one of the things that we need to be working on in our country and around the world.
Definitely.
I have a little bit of a similar story too, in terms of like time frame. I think I was born with that entrepreneurial spirit too. It started manifesting itself a little bit later. I did get kind of the sweet corporate job pretty quick out of college, and found myself really dissatisfied and disillusioned, even though I had a big expense account, a company car, trained for 6 weeks in Hawaii, like just really landed a sweet deal, and was like, this is it. This is what I'm going to be doing for the next, my professional career. Like, no way, no how. So pretty quickly, although that corporate gig funded all of these endeavors, and my roommates would laugh because even in my 20s, I had a few like random online companies that kind of were, just a blip. I had this invention called the batter splatter. Sounds really amazing, right? It's meant for curious.
It does actually. It does.
But it was
A
like
little infomercial for us, one of these days.
Yeah, let's go.
So I would tinker. I would go and buy stuff, at Home Depot and this and that, and make my little inventions. And my roommates, again, this was before I was married, but I was like in my 20s, would be like, "What are you doing now? Like, what is that?" So again, I just always was thinking there has to be something more. There has to be something interesting. But I couldn't have planned it being in the form that it was. It really was that trip to India that changed my life. And that's when the dots were connected for me. But again, the leap didn't happen immediately because I needed the safety net of my job. So it was a little bit like Lisa said, my first pregnancy was actually with twins. So I have, with my husband, 14-year-old twins. And at that point, it was like, whoa, I can't go back to just a traditional job. And, and that was really kind of a life-changing event, was the impetus.
That's very cool. So I cannot thank you both enough for taking the time to share with our community. So on behalf of the Center for Entrepreneurship, Tech Growth Ohio, the Women's Center, the whole Ohio University community, thank you. And the other thing that's super exciting is that we're just getting started. So we're going to start seeing design submissions coming in. You can go to http://bobcat.fashion will redirect you to the super long email that I don't have time to say out loud, the super long URL at ohio.edu. So bobcat.fashion will redirect you. I am really excited to see designs coming in. And in fact, we got our first design already submitted yesterday. So it's getting exciting. So and selfishly, I know that all my Christmas shopping is already taken care of for all not only the women in my life, but in pandemic times when you don't need to be dressed professionally from the waist down, I need some pajamas myself.
That's right. Love it. Thank you, Paul.
I cannot wait. And Ohio University design t-shirts. So again, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. I know we didn't quite have time to get to all the questions. We will try to follow up with those of you who asked additional questions after this broadcast. So everybody stay well out there. If you have questions about designs and want some feedback, please ask. Send them in, and go Bobcats. Go Sudara.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank
Go
you,
Bobcats.
Shannon and Lisa, for your fight for freedom and for taking the time to educate us and offer this amazing opportunity. And to our sponsors, the Center for Entrepreneurship, Tech Growth Ohio, and the Women's Center for bringing us together today in celebration of Women in Entrepreneurship Week. Students, to learn more about how to submit a tea design and join the fight for good, visit ohio.edu/entrepreneurship. Now let's sell some teas and pajamas and make a difference in the world. From Athens, Ohio to Bend, Oregon,